To the first session of New England Drupal Camp 2018. Thanks for coming. Today we're going to talk about meta and schema, defining the content about your content. I'm Jim Birch. You can follow me on Twitter at the Jim Birch, and I have the slides already out there. I tweeted the slides too if you want to just check out the link. There's a lot of things to follow along and testers to check out. I work at an amazing agency called Canopy Studios. We're a fully distributed company. Work with 35 wonderful men and women around North America, in Canada, Mexico, and the US. We're hiring WordPress, Drupal developers, and UX designers. If anybody's looking, check us out online. Today we're going to talk about another layer of how our website looks. So we know how our website looks like on our own server. Front-end developers, back-end developers, this is what we do all day long. We make sure the website looks good. But what happens when our content leaves our website? So when it's shared on social media sites or when it's listed in search engines like Google and Bing. Right now, Google is a near monopoly with 90% of all web search volume. This is a combination of Google, Google Images, YouTube, and their other search properties. And what happens when Google stops sending you their users to your website? So they've started answering their users' questions inside of Google. So what time is it? What's Drupal used for? Who won the Mega Millions lottery? What's a recipe? Where's an electrician near me? Who's Abraham Lincoln? All of these things are answered inside of Google, and they're no longer sending that first piece of information to your website. I've equated it to, we've moved from the ham radio internet days to the cable TV internet days, where you used to be able to get people direct connect. Now you're getting people through a few major corporations. And then the scariest thing is, what happens when there's only one search result? With speakable devices, there is only one possible answer unless you refine your question. The days of being on the first page of Google or being in the top 3 or 4 are coming to an end because those one answers are going to be more popular over the next few years. So, let's get in the game. How do we do this? Most of the answers on Google, featured snippets, are coming from structured markup. So this is what Drupal's great for. We model our content to fit it into content types and taxonomies. Now we can take these overarching content types and apply them with metadata and schema.org. So this is like a simple markup. This is my page on Canopy Studios website. The page itself should be a person schema. Right off the bat, in the person schema, I have a job title. I have a same as, my social media links. I have an image, awards, descriptions, location, knows about. These are bits, the field level data inside of the person schema can mark down this content to actually what it is. It's no longer divs, it is my actual location. So I'm defining this data. I'll get into that a little bit later. So let's be the hero to our content creators and learn about this stuff. I have a too long didn't read bottom line up front. This is everything we're going to go through. On the left, here's all the specifications. This is not magic. Everything is defined on the internet. We can learn about all of this stuff. And then once we've learned about it and we've implemented it, we can test for it. So every one of these specifications have validators. So you can find out once you've implemented it if you've done it right. So we'll go through each of these right now. So here's some metadata and some meta image. Here's Lego Uncle Jim with me in the background. Very meta. Okay, meta means after or beyond, a prefix from ancient Greece that used to indicate a concept, which is an abstraction behind another concept used to complete or add to the latter. This is the most meta picture on the internet. This is a picture of a card in a card catalog about a book that describes the card catalog. Look at this team of people that used to manage metadata. This is people working in the Library of Congress in the 1910s or 1920s, managing those cards in the card catalog for the Library of Congress. Somewhere along the line, we took this to the internet. This is Dynex, a public library card catalog system that hopefully is no longer in use, but it was big in the 80s. And this is the librarian I had in the 70s in my high school, and yeah, now we're the librarian.
So didn't the word sort of morph from next to in Greek to about, because Aristotle's metaphysics was placed on the shelf next to physics?
I'll buy that.
I think it's close to that.
Okay. So, metaphysics and physics aside, let's get into the specifications. So, the metadata for your documents are specified by the World Wide Web Consortium, the W3C. And we have let's get out of the full screen here, a giant list of what's allowed in metadata. It's pretty stiff and boring, but everything is completely defined in this really, 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 really long page. So I'll break it down a little simpler here. It's only 5 basic things that we're going to talk about that is actually metadata in HTML. So the head, the title, the base, the link, and the meta tag. The head is easy enough. This is where all of your metadata is defined. It opens and closes, and if you don't have any metadata, you can leave it out of your HTML page. The title, this is the most important piece of metadata, should be unique to every URL you have on the internet, pagination included. It can be omitted, but shouldn't be, and it needs to open and close. The base, this is a old-timey meta tag where you can set all your base links or your base elements. It doesn't have an end tag, it's just a unique thing. So if you want to say all links on this page have the base of your base URL, define it here. Link, here's where you link to other attributes that are too long to just stick in the head. Your global attributes, your hrefs, your languages, style sheets, icons. This is basically anything that is external to the page, but you want to include it in the metadata. Style, you can have style tags in your metadata. Most of the time we use link to get out because we use a lot of styles. And then the meta tag. The meta element represents everything else, anything that can't be defined in those first 4. For the most part, it should be used only in the head. It doesn't have an end tag, it's just a singular tag. And the most important thing to know about this is that it is defined in name-value pairs. So the meta tag opens, it has a name, in this case a description, and then a value, the content of it. And so this is going to carry out through all of your meta tags. There are only a few standard metadata names that are defined by the W3C, and really, they've been abused and not too many people use it. Description, maybe author are the only ones that are valuable. Generator, we usually take that away. We don't want to tell people it's Drupal or WordPress because that opens us up to bot attacks. Keywords has been spammed, so no search engines really use it. Referrer, you can define a referrer policy. And then there are a few pragmatic directives. So the pragmatic directives speak directly to the compiler, or in this case, a browser. So you're telling the browser what language it's in or what the content type is, if you want it to refresh after 3 seconds, or XUA compatible is to tell IE to be a little bit more not IE. And because the W3C moves at a slow pace and defines things over the course of years, not days, a splinter group of metadata people, forked off on their own and started the web hypertext application technology working group, or the WUTWG, to define other meta extensions. So here's where we get into really fun terms. You can put in an application to this external group to define your own meta tags. So if they approve, or even if they don't approve, they list all the meta tags, so there's no namespacing collisions in the future. But this is a big list of awesome things that will help your content get into different places. So like right off the bat, the AGLS terms, this is a Australian government legal system metadata system. There's Apple specific tags if you want to talk to Apple devices. There's Blazor and Bugzilla. If you're into education, there's citations and Google Scholar tags. And also Dublin Core, which is also for library and academics. There's a ton of those. If you do anything with location, there's geolocation tags, so you can really get really minute about a location. You know, taking what was once a web page and defining it as a place, which is helpful for Google Maps and Facebook locations. But the list goes on and on and on. So, you know, right when I start doing content audits on people's site, you know, I come over here and look at what, you know, is available based on what content they have. So it's good to know. Fun to play the person, place, or thing game. And we'll get into that with schema.org vocabularies later. So, next up, you can define your own meta tags if you need to. This is perfectly legal. It'll pass all validators. So something like a lot of CMSs do is define your category terms as tags, or your tags as tags. Only do it if you need to, if you have something that consumes it. Last time I did it was a search, internal search, where I had a version of a software documentation. So version 1, version 2, version 3. We wanted version 3 to come up in the search engine higher than version 2. So we put the version as a meta tag and weighted that in the search engine, so anytime somebody searches, the latest issue or the latest documentation would come up. So pretty cool stuff to make your own meta tags. Once you've defined all these meta tags and put it into your site, you can validate. So the W3C has a suite of developer tools. You can check your HTML, you can check for broken links, you can check your CSS or RDF or RSS, and then they have one test called the unicorn at the bottom that tests everything. And once you put your URL in there, you get a result of what is valid, what's not valid. So I ran the NetCamp site through the validator, the unicorn validator, because I wouldn't want to run any of my sites through it. There's a lot more red usually. But you come up here and basically there's a few HTML5 things, like if you have a header, you don't need to say it's a banner role. If you have an article, you don't need to say it's an article role. And these are just a few simple things. And then down here there's some problems with their CSS, some illegal comments. But overall, this is pretty amazing for a bunch of volunteers. So be sure to pat them on the back. Drupal also has a W3C validator module where you can actually have that connected to each page that you publish if you want to show your content creators how awesome you are that you've made perfectly valid HTML. And most importantly, what does Google understand? So it's not a secret anymore. What meta tags does Google understand? Well, they tell us on this beautiful help page called Meta Tags That Google Understands. Nice little video from Matt Cutts, and then they have a nice list of tables that they follow. So it's actually Not that many. They do the title, description. They do a lot of directives to their robots. So they follow the robot meta tag. They follow specifically the Googlebot meta tag. So if you wanted to no index or no follow. You can speak directly to Google themselves and say you don't want a site links search box or you don't want translation to appear. So that's kind of like Chrome directive and these Google search results. You can verify. They know what content type and what character set your website is in, and they accept the refresh meta tag also. So they'll know your page refreshes after a certain amount of time. So pretty simple stuff. Facebook started the Open Graph protocol, and this is where we first started getting into structured data. So the Open Graph protocol defines any web page to become a rich object in the social graph. So not only, no longer is your web page a page, it is now a book or an article or an album or a piece of music. So they have specific specifications that they define on ogp.me, how it works, and each of the different arrays that are in there, object types, music, video, article, book, profile. Kind of limited to basic needs here. It doesn't go as in depth as schema.org, but it is probably books, articles, movies, people, web pages, the most popular things that would be in Facebook's social graph. So if you look here, it's a little hard to see, but everything's prefaced by OG. So meta property equals OG, and then the content is that value of it. So the OG title is the title of it. The OG type is the video or article, and then URLs and images and that kind of thing. There are 4 basic required fields: the title, the type, the URL. So these things we always have. The image is the first time that we started realizing that every piece of content on the internet should have an image, especially if you're going to make this as a shareable piece of content. So we'll get into implementing that in Drupal in a minute. Here are the basic types: music, video, article, book, profile, website. And then they have a debugger. Not only does Facebook use this information, but Pinterest, LinkedIn, and other places do also. So Facebook and Pinterest both have a debugger. LinkedIn, there's a LinkedIn trick. If you actually share on LinkedIn and mess up, you can just share it again with a gobbledygook question mark variable at the end, and it'll force LinkedIn to go clear their cache and go fetch it again after you changed it. So when you do the Facebook debugger, this is what that looks like. You enter the URL, it goes out and scrapes it, tells you any errors that you might have, shows you the preview of what it's going to look like when it's shared on Facebook, and then down at the bottom shows you the raw data of what it's actually seeing. So this is how you can define that you have set it up correctly. And then you can force it to scrape again too, if you share and spell the CEO's name wrong or. No, we never do that. No. Twitter cards, not to be outdone by Facebook. Twitter came up with their own metadata to attach rich photos, videos, and media experiences to tweets. It's basically the same thing, except instead of media types, they kind of went with these 4 generic abstractions of the Twitter card. So the first one's the Twitter card. It's like a little widget, small little image, title, description. Summary with the large image is the one I use the most. That's the big image at the top, and the title, and the summary. A player card is if you have audio or video, you can have it play right inside of Twitter. And then an app is if you have a game or an app or something like that, and you can have that display inside of Twitter also. They have a validator also. Who would have guessed it? Here's the specs. Here's the validator. Throw your URL in there. It'll go get your preview, show it to you, and give you a log of what it found. So it doesn't validate each and every tag you have, but it will show you a log of what the validator saw as it went and got it. All right, so implementing meta tags in Drupal. We've gone over all the specs. Now we have to actually implement it. How do we do that? The awesome MetaTag module. When you install the MetaTag module, you have one core module and then a bunch of submodules that add the additional functionality. So the base MetaTag module only installs description, abstract, and keywords. And then for everything else, you need to install all these other submodules as you see fit. When you do that, immediately you get MetaTag defaults. So right off the bat, you have a global MetaTag, content MetaTag, one for front page, access denied page, and search page. These are free. They come with the MetaTag. You can expand these. You can set MetaTags for all instances of the entity. You can attach it to any entity. They're cascading, like style sheets. So what you do in global will be inherited by the ones below it, unless you override it. And then you use tokens to dynamically set values for these entities. So here's what that form looks like. These are the basic tags. I use a title token and a site name token for my page title. Description, I use a teaser field, and then abstract and keywords. I don't fill those out because nobody uses them at all. And then here's what it looks like when it's saved. So in Drupal 8, we have a nice screen that shows the defaults, and you can give a nice overview of what it looks like. Here I set the description and the title. Down here I got the open graph images and site name and title. For the developers in the room, this is what it looks like in config. So if you're more used to doing things in code, you can actually write a config file and import it in, and it will set your meta tags. And again, you can follow the same structure. So we have on the left, the stuff at the top just defines that this is for content node. It has no dependencies. It's in English. And then the tags are defined. You have the name and the value. Name and the value all the way through, just done in YAML. So if you're more used to doing things in code, it's very easy to do. Give it a nice overview. The problem I find with the MetaTag module is that once you install a few modules, you have hundreds of fields in that thing. And to give this to a content creator, they're going to get overwhelmed real quick. You can add this form on every node. So if somebody wants to override the title or the description, instead of using those tokens, they can do so. So you add a MetaTag field to your content type, and then it gives you the form on the right-hand side. I mean, it's nice and collapsed field sets, but still, once you start expanding things, you have the gigantic form again. So I found that it can be overwhelming. It can lead to mismanagement or no use at all. I mean, once people start getting frustrated at things, they just will stop using it. Too many forms on that node edit screen can be a performance hog too. So if you have all your MetaTag forms on your node edit screen, it can add seconds and sometimes up to minutes, depending on how big your node edit form is. They've recently added the MetaTag field settings in MetaTag 8.16. So this is pretty new, about a month old, where you can have that field on your page, but you can only allow some of the forms on there. So that helps a little bit. But what I like to do is I add fields onto my content type that are not used in the display of the content type, and I use those tokens specifically for meta tags. So I always add a teaser or a description field. an image field that's only used for social media. And when I do that, I can make image presets that are specific to Facebook and Twitter. So you notice here that they're almost the same, but the Facebook and Twitter have just slightly different image dimensions for this perfect social media image. And then I add a field group to the node edit form to isolate these from the actual content of the form. So here's what that looks like. I have a field group called summary. I have my page title, the teaser, and then an image field at the bottom. And then I have another tab for content, and that's where all my content for the page goes in. So I found that content creators know that this is the metadata for the site, and it's in there.
So then you don't let them overwrite the actual meta tags. The meta tags pull from these custom fields.
Correct.
Do the meta tags have a fallback?
Yep. So you could, in custom code, say if the teaser field isn't empty, use this specific token or the summary of the node field. You definitely could do that. I haven't done that yet. I have done this and I've added to it, like some clients wanted, don't include this, have robots tags, so I put some Boolean flags in here, included or excluded from the search engine, excluded from being followed. But yeah, so you could do some custom module stuff and have a if this then that kind of situation. Okay, so we're about to wrap up MetaTags. Install the MetaTag module, enable any submodules you need, add fields to the content type for the items that need the individual settings, and then set your global MetaTags, and then test and verify. And then that's it for Meta. Okay, don't want to give anybody seizures so early in the morning. Schema.org. So Schema.org is a collaborative community whose mission is to create, maintain, promote schemas for structured data on the internet, on web pages, in email messages, and whatever comes next. So, we define content types using like OG tags and the Twitter cards. This gets really hyper-focused on structured data. So here's the most commonly used schemas, the creative works. This is what makes the internet fun, right? Events, health and medical types for anybody into SEO. There's pages called Your Money or Your Life that Google considers very important pages where you're defining health things, like people are Googling instead of going to the doctor. So this information needs to be correct. So Google does not want to, tell you to use leeches to suck blood to cure the cold. So if you're in the medical fields, you definitely want to use these schemas. Organization, again, person, places, things have a huge place. And then probably the biggest adoption of schemas was with reviews for e-commerce products and recipes. What does schema look like? These are defined things. You can put the markup inline. This is how it first started. We'd go into our templates and we'd write down that this is an item type of a sports team. The item property is the San Francisco 49ers. There's an organization. So the great thing about schemas is that it can be nested. So it goes beyond meta tags where it's just one line, one line, one line. A sports team has many members to it. So this nested div inside of here is a person that's a member of the 49ers, and his name is Joe Montana. He started in 1979 and finished in 1992, and he was the quarterback. So this is a very base example of inline schema markup. Another way, and this was Drupal's first way, was RDFA, which is a very similar thing. We had a vocabulary of schema.org and a type of, and then the properties went down too. These things were very hard to implement and very hard to update. You needed a developer to do it. What has won the web is JavaScript object notation for linked data, or lovingly called JSON LD. So this is JavaScript, and the benefit of JavaScript is that it can be used in the head and in the body, and it can be loaded as you go. So if you have some kind of headless app or continuous delivery, you can always load more of this JSON LD. And it's very similar to our YAML file that I showed you earlier in our MetaTag, that you have your type, and then you have your name and value pairs. So it's a schema.org, it's a sports team, it has a name, it has a member, and then this bracket opens up your nested array inside, where you have a type of role, member. Inside the member array, you have the person and Joe Montana. So this is the way that you should implement schema.orgs moving further, and a lot of people are already doing it. So if you have Google Tag Manager on your site and work with an SEO company, they may be already injecting schema.org JSON LD into your content. I mean, there's a number of different ways this can be implemented. More importantly, what does Google care about? They tell us. They have this search gallery guide in their docs, in their developer docs, that gives us exactly what they're looking for. So they're defining things for organizations, things for entertainment, things for news, e-commerce, and then in general. And they have guides and implementation step by step of exactly what they're looking for, examples on the right. Really helpful, really good Saturday morning reading. Just kidding. Okay, there are definitely some schemas that for Google that every website needs. Breadcrumbs. If you want to get another little line in the Google search results, you can have your breadcrumbs listed there, and those are links to your website. So not only you have the link at the top, you can have your breadcrumbs, you can show them your structure. If you have your organization information, so every website is a business or a location or a small business, that box on the right can come up there. Inside of organization, you have corporate contact, logo, and social profile. These are your same as. So, this is the Rhode Island College, but the Rhode Island College, exists at ric.edu, but also exists on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Pinterest and all of those other sites. You want to claim those pages as your own. That you're a website. Every homepage should have the website tag at least. And then if you have a search, you can define actions on your website. So there's buy actions and donate actions. A website would have a search action, so you can maybe get that search engine box in Google. If somebody would do Google, how do I search on Rhode Island College.edu? And then there's the content type schemas. So these are the most popular in play today. They're always adding to the list, but again, you have your media things, article, books, courses for anybody in EDU, data sets. You can search on Google for large data sets if you make it available to them. Events will show up on the right-hand side if you have events marked up correctly. Fact check for any fake newsers out there. You can define things as true. Job postings, local businesses, occupation, podcast, product, and recipes. They're adding new and beta features all the time. Just 2 months ago, they announced the Speakable schema on the Google Webmaster Central blog, where a publisher can define what line of the article they want to be speakable if they are chosen as that number one answer in Google audio search. This is more for like large publishers who are going to show up for that, but it's coming. The data set, that was about 3 months ago. About a month ago, I stumbled upon a search engine land article that came out in an interview with one of the SEO team at Google that said they use facts, QA, and how-to schemas in their search results, and that's how they get a lot of their featured snippets. So little known schemas, but something that a lot of websites have: facts and questions and answers and how-to pages. And then top places list. I just noticed this one on that search gallery page. It just showed up on the bottom, top places. And if you search for fun things to do in Providence, Rhode Island, a list will come up on the right-hand side that somebody has marked up correctly. And then job postings. Another one Google's trying to get into is, instead of going to Indeed or Monster.com, go to Google and search for Drupal developer in Providence, Rhode Island, and you can see your job listing on the right-hand side of the page. So good for our company blogs and websites to do that. So Jim, how do you know all this stuff? I read a lot. Google publishes a lot of things on the Google Webmaster Central blog. It trickles down. A few years ago, Google said your website needs to be fast, and as a search engine ranking. Before that, they said your website needs to be HTTPS. You need to have an SSL certificate, and then boom, 40% of the website goes secure. So they do announce these things, and it does trickle out. But the Google Webmaster Central blog, the keyword, which is Google's corporate blog, every once in a while, web search items will bubble up there. Those are really important ones. For schema, there is a pending.schema.org. So these are applications that have come in and gone past the committee and are opened up to different, basically feedback from the whole community. And then schema.org is an open source project. They have an issue queue on GitHub. You can go in and see what is being discussed, what is actually working on, and you can actually go in there and see Google employees talking about new issues and new things. It's very good to keep an eye on what those guys are doing. So implementing schema.org in Drupal, how do we do it? Well, the schema.org MetaTag module. Again, similar to the MetaTag module, you have your one schema.org module and then a suite of submodules that give you the specific things you need afterwards. It extends the MetaTag module, so they didn't recreate the farm with this. They just extended what was already existing. It adds new forms to your content types using those MetaTag defaults. It adds markup as JSON LD in the head of the document, and it is very easily extendable. So you see earlier that the schema.org, actually, I didn't even show you, go back here and show the full hierarchy of schema. So there's a lot of schemas. I was looking the other day, there's a bed schema. The bed schema is under bed type, which goes into qualitative value, which is underneath the accommodations, which is underneath hotel, which is underneath location. So yeah, you can go on and on forever. There's no way the MetaTag, schema.org MetaTag module will be able to handle every schema that exists. So you can basically copy one of the submodules, change it to what your needs, install it. It's very easy to make a submodule of what you need. So it does cover, all the big ones. And then because it covers the big ones, it's going to have a lot of secondary objects, like monetary amount and nutrition information. These are going to come free with recipes and reviews and products. It gives you more things on the form. And then, like the code, it is nested arrays. So here's the website, here's the potential action for the website, and here's the search action. So there's a couple nested items in here. And that's how you get into that specificity. When it is output, here's an output of that past screen. Here's my JSON LD, it's a website, my website. The potential action is the search action. And the search action gives the URL where Google could actually search on my website. Who's the publisher of the website? Why, I'm the publisher of the website, and I have a Drupal.org page down here. That's my save as. Where Drupal really shines in implementing schema.orgs is the structured data that we already have in Drupal. So, with MetaTags, most of what we can do is defined in that content tag. But for schema.org, I want to drill down into each of my content types and define them differently. So I have a web page. These are my landing pages, my about, contact, homepage. But I have articles. These are my blogs. And I have authors. These are my authors for the blogs. You could also use users. I just use content types. So again, you have this huge long form, but this is specific to person. So I can say my author is a person, and then take those fields for my content type or the user profile and apply those tokens specifically to the person. Anything I don't fill out will be taken from the content and the global tags, but any specificity I put in there is mine. Once we've done that, we can test and verify. So my last page over here, come to the Google Structured Data Testing tool, throw your URL in there, and it will go and scrape your content and come back with what you've done right, what you've done wrong. In this case, they went and they found the website in person schema on my sites. They've defined what they found, and they also tell me I have an error that I will fix this afternoon. So, to sum up, install schema.org MetaTag module, enable any submodules you need, configure those MetaTag defaults, and especially the MetaTag defaults per content type, and then test and verify. And one more cat gift for the road. So the slides are up online. Be more than happy to continue this conversation throughout the day and on Twitter and anywhere else. I'm a big fan, and obviously you all are too, being at a Drupal camp on a Saturday morning, learning about schema and metadata. More than happy to answer any questions or send you on your way.
Can you talk about Drupal 7?
Sure.
How much of this is common to both 7 and 8?
100%. Yeah. There are, since the schema.org MetaTag module started in Drupal 8 and was backported to Drupal 7, but the woman that developed it has been a Drupal developer for 10 years. So things do trickle back into it. It might not be 100% up to date, but all of that functionality is there. Sure.
So can you specify breadcrumbs like in schema for like your search engine result page? So like on say I was looking at our oomph page, like we have, it's like our contact, and then it's like this random product that we offer, and then our services is below that. Are we able to like specify that?
Okay, so you're talking, I believe they're called quick links.
Yeah.
Not breadcrumbs.
Okay.
So breadcrumbs actually show up just underneath your description in like a slightly smaller font.
Okay.
With those quick links that are on Google search results, when you do a branded search, you can't control what they do, but you can ask them to remove specific ones.
Okay.
So they are determining what are the most important pages on your site using their algorithm. So it could be links, it could be just what people click on in the search. But yeah, you can't ask them to put things there, but you can ask them to remove things.
Or it could just be whatever we have the best metadata for it.
Could be. But I mean, so if you're doing a branded search of oomph, like the contact page is going to be one of the things, maybe directions, maybe your product is what people are looking for, what Google thinks they're looking for. Yeah.
So you mentioned, nobody bothers with the abstract and keywords. So is there a cheat sheet somewhere, or should I just go through the slides of your presentation to find advice like that?
Yes, there's also a very good book by Ben Finklia called the Drupal 8 SEO book. Very cleverly titled. And it's a step-by-step guide of setting your site up for meta tags in Drupal 8. So he does things like copyright and content referrers and security meta tags, and there's some good stuff in there. He actually populates the abstract, but I don't know of anybody that uses it. I don't know anybody that consumes it. Yeah. And then the other place, like there are a lot of blogs that watch the search community, like Search Engine Land, Search Engine Journal. There's a lot of good, helpful articles on sites like that.
But I don't want to spend all my time doing this. I want one cheat sheet.
Sure. Maybe I should write a blog too.
When people talk about data layer, is that the same as this, or is that a different thing?
No, so data layer is a Google search, Google Tag Manager feature where you can write things to it. So one of those things you could write to it would be JSON LD with schema.org in there. It's basically like you can do things, it's like another layer in your code just for Google Tag Manager to do things to. So a lot of people like e-commerce will write, once a transaction is completed, they'll write all the data only to that data layer in JavaScript. So it's like, that's not on the web, it's in JavaScript on render, which communicates with Google Tag Manager. Google Tag Manager then does other things with it. And then, you can use it. So not like search related, but Google related. Anyone else? All right, perfectly on time, and I'm going to stop the red button. Thank you very much.